ever catch yourself thinking, why is it so hard for me to just get things done, focus, manage my time, stay organized, and not get sidetracked? Yeah, me neither. Growing up, I was the epitome of a good student, organized, punctual, and always on top of my schoolwork. I even did my homework on Fridays instead of procrastinating until Sunday night. Sure, studying was tough, and focusing was a challenge, but who didn't feel that way? Everything seemed perfect, and nothing about my brain hinted at any sort of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD. I was well behaved, didn't struggle much in school, and stayed out of trouble, until I moved out of my parents' house to go to college. Slowly, I started slipping. I began skipping classes, procrastinating until the last minute, and losing motivation because I wasn't interested in my coursework. I chalked it up to simply being over school. At the same time, my YouTube channel started taking off, and all I wanted to do was focus on that. I managed to convince my parents to let me take a gap year, which eventually turned into me never going back to college. I thought eliminating the boring school part of my life would allow me to return to being organized and focused on my passion. But instead, things got worse. I struggled to stay organized, and if I didn't want to do something, it felt like torture just to get it done. I found myself hyperfixating on new interests, and distractions seemed to come out of nowhere. Looking back, I couldn't understand why I was having such a hard time. I used to be so put together. Where did things go wrong? I couldn't believe that child me had it more together than adult me. I used to color code every binder I owned, and now I couldn't even keep track of a $20 bill I had in my hand just minutes earlier. Despite feeling like I was spiraling for years, I never suspected it could be related to a neurodevelopmental disorder. I just thought I was lazy or not trying hard enough. Then one day, my brother texted me to say he had been diagnosed with ADHD. I was surprised because he never seemed to exhibit the typical symptoms I associated with ADHD: hyperactivity, running around, being loud. He was quiet and well-behaved, just like I was. But as he explained his symptoms, it all started to make sense. The struggles he described sounded eerily similar to what I had been experiencing in my own life. You'd think that would have been enough for me to seek a diagnosis for myself, but nope. I was just like, good for you, bro. Happy for ya. Meanwhile, I continued struggling with simple tasks like opening up my drawing program, convinced that my issues were just a result of laziness. But the mental seed was planted. I knew ADHD was genetic, so the thought that it could be affecting me too lingered in the back of my mind. It took a few years after my brother's diagnosis for me to finally sit down and consider that I might have ADHD too. My symptoms were getting worse. My attention span was shrinking. I was forgetting things as soon as they entered my head, and I was hyperfixating on random stuff like an addict. It felt like a constant battle just to get one thing done. Finally, I decided to get myself diagnosed. What did I have to lose? If anything, they'd just tell me I didn't have ADHD and that I needed to try harder. But of course, it took me 8 months to actually schedule the appointment. Classic ADHD move, right? After meeting with a psychologist for a few weeks, the day of diagnosis finally arrived. I was so ready for him to tell me I was normal and just needed to suck it up. Instead, he said, "You definitely exhibit symptoms of the inattentive type of ADHD." And then, almost as an afterthought, he added, "And autism." Wait, what? That last part threw me for a loop. But as he explained how ADHD was affecting me, I started to understand. He even gave me a 37-page document detailing his conclusions and how my brain works. Reading through it, I felt a sense of relief. My struggles were justified. I wasn't just lazy. There are different types of ADHD: hyperactive, inattentive, and combined. Hyperactive is what most people think of when they picture a kid who can't sit still. Inattentive, which is what I have, involves difficulty with focus, memory, and organization. Combined is a mix of both. I mentioned to my psychologist that I used to be a good student with seemingly no ADHD symptoms, and he offered a couple of explanations. 1. I had always leaned on my mom for organizational support, so when I moved out, things started falling apart. 2. ADHD affects women differently than men, and it's less researched. Women often mask their symptoms better, and ADHD can start affecting them later in life. These explanations made a lot of sense to me and put my ADHD imposter syndrome to rest. Getting diagnosed with ADHD has completely changed how I approach my life. It's still hard to get things done sometimes, but I'm much less hard on myself. I understand that I might need to go about tasks differently, and that's okay. I even tried medication. Good old instant-release Adderall. The idea of taking it made me nervous, but I needed to get a script done, and nothing else was working. When I finally took it, it was incredible. All the non-stop thoughts in my brain went silent. I could think clearly, focus on my work, and not get distracted. It was like a superpower, and I couldn't believe how much I was able to accomplish. I wrote this entire script in 3 hours, compared to my usual 12. Afterward, I immediately cleaned the bird's room without procrastinating. It felt amazing to have my life together, even for just a few hours. I'm not here to diagnose anyone or promote medication. I'm just sharing my experience and how it's changed my life. If you're on the fence about getting diagnosed, I get it. It's scary. But for me, having a concrete answer has been life-changing. I'm excited to keep learning more about how my mind works and finding new ways to improve my day-to-day life. Cheers to getting normal things done.